Because without people, you can't do anything really. Do the right things when no one's watching.
You will be surprised at a football match.
I would genuinely say it's the only time at a match I've been scared.
Football for breakfast again today. Crack the world's problems, then we're on our way.
Welcome to Football for Breakfast, brought to you by OSS Security. I'm Jim Johnson, and our guest today fell in love with football through Brian Clough's Nottingham Forest and built a career around believing that if you put people at the heart of what you do, the results take care of themselves. His name is Graeme Kelly. Put the kettle on, you're amongst good companions. Graeme Kelly, sit yourself down. So what's the breakfast order?
Crispy bacon bap.
Crispy bacon bap. Go on then. What are you thinking behind the crispy bacon bap? I mean, you can't order a crispy bacon bap at a match.
No. That would be a pie at the match. But on the way to the match, I always try and get some breakfast with my son in the morning and stuff like that. And this is
nice.
Genuinely what we both go for.
Something else you can't get at a match anymore. Well, or they seem to be phasing them out. Now, in Roy the Rovers, the 3rd of May 1980, there is, in the Roy Race Talking, there is a question from Gary Towers of Gosport in Hampshire, and he collects programmes and would like to know if he can put him in contact with a club that sells them. And Roy says that all clubs sell programmes, Gary. Well, moving forward, that's something that is being now phased out of the game. I'm seeing more and more clubs who no longer... How do you feel about programmes?
It's one of them whereby I was the same as I had boxes and boxes from when I was younger of programmes and ticket stubs, and it's something that's just come along, hasn't it, in the fact that, you know, I haven't even thought about it until recently. I was speaking to my son again, just saying we got so even your ways and now these NFCs, you know, on your phone and stuff like that, but we actually got a physical away ticket, and my son was acting like it was some sort of dragon from Narnia because he didn't understand why it wasn't on a phone. It's the same with programmes. I get the programme through by WhatsApp off a friend before the match, the day before. So you'd end up reading it before you go to the match, and it's something that's totally fell out of anything that I do. My son's not interested in it.
No.
And he's only 11 years old yet. He would never, he never really picks it up, even though I'll buy one just for the memory sort of thing. But they always end up getting thrown away now. So yeah, everything's gone digital, and I've got numerous programmes on my phone now in a WhatsApp group. That's about it.
It's like, because in the old days, they were kind of a collector's thing. Yeah. And my memory going back really when I was a little boy, and I'm not a Liverpool fan, but I grew up in Neston on the Wirral.
Yeah.
Right. And there used to be a printers called Lehman's, I think it was Lehman's Colour they were called. Right. And they used to have the contract for the Liverpool programme. Jesus. And so when friends or like older people that I knew used to come back with a programme, and son, have a look at that programme, I'm sort of half interested because it's football but it's not my team. I'd see this thing printed by Lehman's Colour in Neston, and I was like, that's mind blowing. Yeah. Because you know, on the back of the programme, they're like mythical creatures. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. The difference between the touchline and the stands, certainly in those days, you know, when there were barriers and things like that in place, seemed like just impossible. And you know, I guess in many ways, footballers now are kind of like rock stars, aren't they? Do you know what I mean? They're probably bigger than rock stars. They certainly make more money. But the programme was one of those ways where we connected with them.
In the 90s, I remember going to the match, and I'd buy my programme every game.
Yeah.
And there was one time I went into the old main stand.
Yeah.
And they'd run out of programmes, and I was absolutely bereft. I was panicked. And they used to have a club shop on the main stand, Anfield Road end.
Yeah.
And that was the club shop was
that was it.
No bigger than this, you know. And that was it. They'd have a few shirts.
That's where you get your merch.
You can buy anything. You can buy the golf tees and everything. Back then it was a few shirts, woolly hat, a scarf.
Yeah.
But they'd have the programmes in there.
Yeah.
Because to get all the ones from round the ground he didn't sell and put them in there the next week.
The old,
and and the game was kicking off at 3 the next week. I'd get there for like 10:30, 11 just to make sure I got that programme from the week before. So that's how important it used to be. But I think with everything that people and kids can buy and the information you can access on the internet, such as stats and you know the shirt numbers and all these different things and the photos and your videos, your inside Anfield and that, it's just become less and less important to the next generation. Even myself, because you read your papers and you read your magazines online and stuff now.
I mean, I think one of the great sort of developments of football in recent years has been the insurance that time added on for stoppages is adhered to.
Yeah.
You know, when we see how often the ball spends out of play and things like that. You know, I can remember, years ago, John Barnes was tracked, and John Barnes at his peak in that Liverpool team, the game played through him, right? And yet his on-ball stats were probably no more than about under 2 minutes in the entire game, right? So that's how much a great talent of the game would spend on the ball. But I do think that the idea that a game might now last 110 minutes of your time, it does stop the early darts as well.
Yeah.
You know, or if the early darts are more obsessed with not sitting in traffic, then ultimately they are going to miss out.
But I think as well with that, there's no consistency to it, is there? Like, I've been to games where there's been that many stoppages and, people, because it happens at Anfield a lot, where teams do come to spoil a game, kick it out of play, take a bit long with the throw and move the goal kick from one side to the other.
Yeah.
Corner, put the ball back, stuff like that, just crazy things. And there's games where, like, you've seen at the weekend, the Sunderland Spurs match went on till, I think it was 102 minutes or something like that. But there's somewhere they put the board up and it's like 3 or 4. And you're like, it just doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
I think to be consistent, they'd have to treat it like they do with the VAR and things like that, which, well, that's inconsistent in itself. But actually have it tracked at the side of the pitch instead of just, and have it really consistent across every game, because some games there are these 110 minutes, but then there's others that it's just not adhered to. It's the normal 3 or 4 minutes.
But it's the human error. Yeah. It's the human in the wheel. It's the human influence that makes it what it is. You can't go, for instance, to the theatre or to the movies unless you see something for the first time. Be surprised, right? You will be surprised at a football match.
Yeah.
Whatever happens, even if the surprise is, oh, that was another terrible performance, or, oh, we won again, the things the variables that take place in there. I mean, Priestley in our Good Companions book calls it conflict and art. There's nowhere else. I've got a theatre background, right? You can't finesse that kind of conflict and art in a Shakespeare play. No. And Shakespeare is the great dramatist of the English language. There is something about football that can't be finessed in any other way.
I'm one of the people that would. I would actually remove VAR, because although it says it cleans stuff up, I do like that there used to be an argument about things, and you'd be able to, I know there still is an argument because you don't agree with the referee or the VAR hasn't picked it up and stuff like that. But I think that element's gone, and that comes back to something with technology and stuff as well as, only recently, me and my friend had an argument of a Man United Champions League game one time when Redondo did this trick, and we argued who the defender was he did it against. And
right.
It went on for about 20 minutes.
Yeah.
We'll Google it. And in time, I remember thinking in times gone by when you didn't have the internet, that argument could have went on for days or weeks, because you wouldn't be able to access that information. You'd have to speak to someone else who agreed it was Henning Berg or Ronnie Johnson or something.
But it's memory.
Yeah.
It's memory, and I'm interested in what your earliest memory was.
Oof. Now there's two, because I've been thinking about this. I find Forest at home a massive game all the time, and no one understands why. And I think it's because my first game was 85 or 86.
Okay.
And we played against Forest and we won 2-0. So
tough side to beat at the time.
Yeah, at the time we were a quality team, but it's one of them whereby I don't remember much. Like I was speaking to my mother-in-law about stuff yesterday, and she remembered being 3. I don't remember anything before like 10, but I do remember that game. And then there was another one where, and again, it was about 91. I think we'd just gone back into Europe after the ban, and we played someone to say Swarovski,
Yeah.
Legia or something like that. I think we won 4 or 5-0.
Maybe Legia Warsaw, maybe something.
No, the name was Swarovski.
Khrushchevsky.
Got it, yeah.
Sounds like an American GI.
Yeah. But it was, and it was one of them whereby, and again, these are two things. So Forest, I'm always like, I'm going that game. I won't miss it. I'll make me excuses to miss other things to go to that game because it's etched in my mind. But also with the European Cup, because I went that game and it was quiet because I remember I was being able to sit wherever you wanted in the main stand and stuff like that. But it's always been massively important to the European Cup, even so much so when we used to go under Benitez.
Yeah.
And then we went out the Champions League for a while.
Yep.
And I loved it that much. I remember saying to myself, I'm never going to miss a Champions League game again.
Right.
Get back in.
Yeah.
And then since I haven't, sometimes you can be knackered and you've got a flight at 3 a.m. the next day or something. And I'll always make the effort to go.
So you were there the Barcelona night?
Yeah.
You were?
Them nights, yeah. Barcelona.
Going back to Forest, I mean, I think it's interesting because you said that your earliest memory was kind of that mid-80s and, Forest was still in the pomp, well, not quite in the pomp of Cloughy. Because Clough's rise had sort of, and I think one of the interesting things about Brian Clough as a manager is very few football managers win a title. Even less football managers win a title in different eras, and even less football managers win a title with different teams. And what's interesting about Cloughy is that his first iteration as a title-winning manager, when he won with Derby, he did it, and this is kind of picked up a little bit in the Damned United. That if anybody has seen that movie or read that book, know what I'm talking about. But it was Cloughy against Leeds' Don Revie and Leeds. Your experience is very much Cloughy against the dominance of that Liverpool side, the 80s team, but actually also the late 70s team. People forget that Cloughy came up from the old second division, which is the Championship now, and then won the title. But he won the title against that Liverpool team. And not only did he go and win the title, he then went on to win back-to-back European Cups, right? Including, I think, in the second season when they won. I think the first season they beat Keegan's Borussia Mönchengladbach. In the second season they beat Malmo. But on the way to beating Malmo, they had an all-British tie, an all-English tie against Liverpool. So there was very much, I think, at the time, probably you didn't realise it in that earliest memory, but there was a serious rivalry, almost like, outside of your Man Uniteds and the Evertons, Forest were the team, right?
Yeah, for sure. And I think when you look at teams now, and this might just be my age, I look at teams and I still think like Villa is a really big team because they've done stuff in Europe. Forest the same, you know what I mean? So I think once you've got that pedigree, there is something around that European royalty sort of that we speak about regularly. Yeah. Because I do, because both them teams spent time down the Championship. Yeah. And when I've looked at the Championship and seen them in Leeds and all these teams, I've gone, wow, there's some calibre of teams that are down there, and I think it always does come back to that, like European royalty. I think it's quite special to win a European Cup.
Well, 2 stars on the shirt it cannot be. I was in Nottingham over the weekend, and I attended a youth team game, and it was a Liverpool Forest game, and it coincided with the anniversary of Hillsborough, as it always does around that time of the year, and I thought there was something really lovely about the fact that the 2 sets of boys that observed the minute silence were from Liverpool and Forest, because Forest are a kind of a component part of that story, because they were the team that Liverpool were playing that day. And I almost feel as though, had it been a more, shall we say, like adversarial rivalry, there may have been further connotations. The fact that it was Nottingham Forest and Brian Clough as a footballing man and all of that, I think there's something really wonderful about that. You talked about your earliest memory, but what does football mean to you, Graeme?
It's about, for me it is about family and relationships, in the sense of like I bonded going with my dad.
Yeah.
And sometimes that was the only time you'd spend one-on-one. You'd see your dad and you'd talk about the match, and you could talk for hours about football and stuff. And maybe that's not something you do with your dad about all other subjects in life. And you get to spend that time, and it's comfortable, and you're both in the cause for that. You're in the trenches wanting your team to win, and so there was that massive pull for me. My brother also used to come to that match, the matches whom really close to. And then it's sort of gone further on for me in the sense of now I take my kids. I've got a son and a daughter, and as they get older, there's things that take over, friends, driving, all these different caveats.
Yeah.
But the one thing they'll say to me each week is we go in the match.
Really?
So we get that time to the two of them. So the three of us will go to the match. We're lucky enough to be able to go to every match at home, and some of the aways. So it's something that's massively important. Probably even more so my daughter than my son.
Right.
Which is a mad one. So it's about that sort of element, but it's also a great equaliser, I think, because you can go to, with work, you can go to a factory and you can speak to guys, operators on the line, or you can speak to the MD of a business, or you can speak to the receptionist, and everyone, 90% of people in this country, are footy mad.
It is a universal language.
Oh, without a doubt. And it's something that you can always go back to. And even though I'm a Liverpool fan, I like to speak about all the other teams. And even if, teams are doing well or teams aren't doing well, or there's a certain player you like my team, you've always got that, that's something in common. Do you know what I mean? Because you'll know football and you'll be able to go on history, like we just spoke about, the European Cup.
Yeah.
So if someone supports a smaller team, you can always link in with something that they've done in the FA Cup or something like that. It's I think it's just a great equaliser across the board, to be honest.
So why Liverpool?
Just parents, just dad.
Really?
Yeah. From a younger age. To be honest, my uncle was a big Everton fan. My nan was a Tranmere fan.
Oh yeah.
So it was one of them whereby I up until the age of like 7 or 8, I was happy for any of the teams to win.
Yeah.
And they'd buy me the tops and everything. And my dad never pressured me, even though he's an avid Liverpool fan.
Your family are proper red, white and blue.
Yeah, they were.
Right.
They are and they were at the time. But my dad never really pressured me to say, you've got to support Liverpool. Mm-hmm. But it did come to a point where we said, we've got to sort of pick a side. He didn't say it, but you just felt it. I'm glad I went with Liverpool in the end out of the three options.
Well, you did okay. I mean, and I suppose I'm assuming you got no resistance from your children.
No, not
but
they support all three.
And they've grown up in a golden era as well, of course.
Yeah, for sure. They don't understand. So even when we've been beaten a few times this season, which has been rubbish, and the performances have not been as good as we'd like, my son's quite spoilt with it. He's like, we're garbage. Yeah. When he hasn't seen the days of the Hodgsons and stuff like that, where we were really, really poor. He's only seen the fantastic Klopp teams and then winning the league last year and stuff like that. That's all he really remembers. So he's not been, as I say, in the trenches.
I think there's a definite correlation to how entitled a football fan can be based on how successful their experience of watching their team is. Yeah. Like, for instance, you mentioned your nan being a Tranmere Rovers fan. I'm assuming that's not just from the teeth out. That is a genuine sort of local, and went to games and things like that. Well, I suppose anybody that knows the story of Merseyside football will know that Tranmere have had their ups and downs, but a lot of it has been around being a cash-strapped club in an area of, broadly speaking, some kind of challenging socio-economic difficulties, and they've had some good times and some bad times. But when the bad times were bad, it was a question of, can we turn the lights on? And your nan would have seen it all.
But I have noticed something recently in the world that there's a lot of like young lads, because they can't go to Liverpool games, they can't get tickets. I'd love to see the capacity. I've not looked, so it might be.
I think they get about 6,000, don't they?
I wonder if it's growing, because I just see more and more young lads who, when I speak to friends and their sons and their sons' friends, they all go to the Tranmere games. And don't get me wrong, they're not going to grow in revenue or anything, because I think the tickets are like £1 or something crazy to get people on sums on seats really. But I do see a lot of young people now turning to the Tranmere games and stuff like that, because of a massive problem we do have within Liverpool, and young people being able to get the game and being costed out, as you've seen with some of the protests of late. Is, you know, it's people are turning to maybe these lower leagues, which can't be bad for football either.
I think though that one of the issues there is accessibility, and you know, I myself was a kind of a Tranmere Rovers. I mean, they're not my first team, but they're my local team. Yeah. And I was very, very lucky to grow up when Tranmere were on that Johnny King crest of a wave. Now, one of the brilliant things about it was I would rub shoulders on a Friday night. They don't play on a Friday night anymore. But Friday night football for Tranmere was a big thing. But we would rub shoulders with genuine football fans from Everton and Liverpool who just wanted to go to the match and then maybe go for a beer after the game. Now, I think that's one of the things that as you say, your son's generation or your daughter's generation will probably experience. I know one of my best friends, they live in Heaton Moor, which is on the cusp of it's on the cusp of central Manchester and Stockport, and so his youngest lad, who's actually a rugby fan by definition, would go to Stockport because his mates went, and it was just a good crack. You know. And I think they're not excluded from the game by virtue of like ticket yield. It is expensive to support a Premier League team. I mean, Lord knows it's expensive to watch football these days.
For sure.
But if clubs have good policy around recruitment, it's a bit like if you're a golfer, right? You can get really cheap green fees at some of the best private golf clubs in the country if you're a youth, you're a junior member, because the idea is that one day you'll become a senior member, and if you're bought in, you know, you'll kind of stay with. And I think that's, you know, it's a psychological part of retention of supporters in football. I mean, look at Wrexham. I mean, Wrexham, it's not merely about the input of two Hollywood superstars. It's about what they built as a consequence of that, and as a consequence of that, you're locked out of games. You know, they've really created, and they were doing that in League One and League Two. So.
But I think they could, and this is where it's a bit disappointing really, is I think we could do a lot more for Tranmere, you know, as a Liverpool and Everton, both clubs, with regards to youth systems, lending of, you know, sports science, coaching, all these sorts of things to help it survive and take on a little bit of the bill, and youth players actually getting real minutes in some tough games. You know?
What you're actually describing there is trickle-down economics, right? Yeah. You're basically saying no. And it's almost like the failure of trickle-down economics. If you look at it, the point of capitalism, and football is in many ways a microcosm of capitalist construct. But at the top of the pyramid, you've got your Real Madrids and you've got your Liverpools and whatnot. And the idea is that it is supposed to cascade down, and it doesn't. And I think that's really interesting.
I think it's more, you know, whilst I completely agree, I think it's a bit better in this country than it is in, say, Spain and stuff like that, because I think Barca and Real take 80% of the TV
rights and all that
where
stuff.
All 19 teams get a 19th in the Premier League, and it does drop down. I think it's a little bit different in Spain, but we're actually asking, from a point of view of a governing body, to do stuff there. I just like to see it being a bit more of a community thing, whereby Liverpool and Everton go, right, let's look after our own, let's look after...
A bit like it is in Germany.
Yeah, definitely, for sure, where it's more of a social thing, community thing, whereby people look after each other.
I think it's really interesting, if you use Germany as an example, after the Second World War, the German economy had rebuilt itself, and they'd absolutely... in Western Germany, I should say, had reached all their targets around social housing within 5 or 6 years after the war, and we still hadn't in the UK reached our social housing targets until, I don't think we ever did. No. You know, so there is something around how you feel, and to be honest with you, people have the power in that situation. You know, they have the agency there to kind of make those things, a reality. And it's, football again becomes the microcosm of it. We talked about the pyramid though, and obviously we ask everybody here to talk about their grassroots team. And you've put down Ashville.
Yeah, again, it's more about friendships and stuff like that. When I got to school, I was, obviously met friends that are today still my best friends, best men and stuff like that. And I was their best men, and they played for Ashville.
Right. Did you play yourself?
Yeah, so I went along to Ashville myself. And
which period are we talking?
This is early 90s.
Right.
So, it was still them pitches where we were playing on, like where the kids now are all. There's lots of rules where you can roll the ball out, you can't press, and to get them to develop smaller goals, smaller pitches. We were still playing on men's pitches with
11v11
goals, 11v11.
Yeah.
Absolute mud baths that they definitely wouldn't play on now.
No.
I think they get called off if there's a bit of wind now and stuff like that. So,
is that a good thing or a bad thing?
I don't know. I've always thought, because we got our game cancelled yesterday because of the weather, and I always think you can always.
Your game meaning.
My son, yeah.
Yeah. Who does he play for?
He plays for Shaw Villa.
Okay.
So,
Shaw Villa are another part of that Wirral infrastructure. They brought Tranmere players through.
Yeah. Well, he plays on a Saturday and a Sunday for Shaw Villa. So
right. Okay.
I don't know whether it's a good or bad thing, because I think it's a brilliant thing what they've done, where they've changed the rules on, rolling the ball out and not being able to press until the second touch and staying in your own half when they were younger, things like that, because it has developed kids being able to take that second touch and looking up and passing the ball. But I think that we are far too mollycoddling of them with other things such as weather and grass and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I think that, and another brilliant thing is these Astro pitches. Whilst they don't like the way the ball runs on them and stuff like that, it's important because we get games on. So there should be more of an investment in that.
Well, we've come to the end of the first half, so I can hear the whistle blowing in my head. In the second half, Graeme, we're going to talk a little bit more about your personal story, and for the moment, that's half time. This show exists because people believed in what it could be before it was anything. J.B. Priestley wrote about football turning strangers into companions, a community built in 90 minutes. And that's the whole idea behind what we're doing here. And OSS Security got that straight away. Not just the podcast, but the point of it, the belonging, the conversations, the thing that football does to people when it's at its best. They came on board as believers in the show, in the vision, in what this community can become. They say, got you covered. And that's exactly how it feels for the show and for everyone who's part of it. So, whatever you need, whether that's for your business or for your home, simply knowing someone's looking out for you, well, they've got you covered. We're proud to have them with us on this journey, and you can find a link to them in the show notes to find out more. So, Graeme, in the second half, we like to talk a little bit about our guests' non-football world. Describe that world to you. How did you get to where you are now?
It's a strange one, really. Is from a young age, I wasn't massively academic, although I wanted to try and keep up with the Joneses, maybe with my friends who were academic. And they were going on to do really well in GCSEs, A-levels and degree and stuff. And I followed a similar path just a little bit later, because it took me a lot longer to get there, because I'd have to do different types of education. And GCSEs would turn into GMBQs and BTECs to get to me to university to get a degree. But I was always more of a doer and working.
So with your hands, or
no, more of a I wanted to. When I was in university, I had a more or less full-time job running a bookmakers.
Really?
Yeah, and
what, a bookies?
Yeah, a bookies for a large. I don't know if we can mention them, but a large bookmakers in the country. And I just had a fascination for growing the business, but we grew through like community and stuff. Getting older people in to be able to have chatty Saturdays and things like that. And having hosting tea events and stuff.
So using the bookmakers premises as a community hub.
Yeah, as a community hub, because a lot of older people would come in and make bets and stuff like that, and you'd notice they'd always, as older people do, they're a bit lonely and wanted to chat.
Yeah.
But they'd all come in at different times in the day and things like that. So we created a hub for them, not to get them all hooked on gambling or anything.
Well, I was about to say, there's an ethical question there, right?
There is, and you know that's the sad part of it when it comes to younger people. But with older retirees, it was 1p lucky 15s.
Really?
You weren't making money out of it.
What's a 1p lucky 15
It
one?
was 15p. Yeah, that's all it would be as a bet: singles, doubles, trebles. And
So the thrill of winning.
It didn't mean anything. You could maximum they could win is 3 or 4 quid, but it was just about going to have a consistent time to go and pick some horses.
Yeah.
Have a cup of tea. So we structured it so we could have them there at the same time, and then created a community. And then what was great is I had a group of women that I worked with in the bookmakers, and we'd go out as team building. We'd go to the bingo.
Lovely.
And then you'd see older people that didn't know each other but met through the bookies at the bingo together.
It's like target marketing.
Yeah, no. So it was an absolutely brilliant thing, and I think, and that's what got me really is with everything that I tried to do from that point on. It was about, you know, bringing people together, community, and people being at the essence of everything. And I went through, I got different jobs, and I tried to wonder if I was into retail or was I into manufacturing.
Right.
And I got different jobs in these sectors as shift leaders and area manager within the bookmakers, because I went through and got on a graduate scheme.
Yeah.
So I did all these different things, and I realised that I was a massive salesman, and that's what I wanted to be into.
Yeah.
So I worked for a large hire company.
Yeah.
And I worked for a guy who was quite inspirational in that sense.
Yeah.
And taught me a lot of what I knew about sales. And then I got semi-headhunted by an entrepreneur who owned an engineering business. And he was quite honest in the sense of, he said that, you know, the business isn't doing too well. We've got 100 odd staff, and we've literally got about 6 months unless we turn it round.
Right.
So we went in, and again, we just made the people of the business the hub of the entire thing, because without people, you can't do anything really.
No.
We empowered people, we gave people, asked them for their ideas, what we went forward with. And we took on a lot of young guys who could think differently as well, going into the workplace.
What period is this?
This is 2009, so this is when the recession hit.
So just after 08, the 08 crash?
Yeah, the 08 crash, 2009, the country's on its arse.
Yeah.
And it was a big
the world economy's on its arse.
But I think we hit it. We took it more than most, to be honest, in this country.
Well, because a lot of the UK's economy is based on financial services, right?
Yeah. And also, we didn't have anything to back it up with manufacturing anymore and stuff like that.
Don't make anything anymore, yeah.
So, but we grew that business over 60% in recession, from 10 to about 16.5 million.
Wow.
And we really, as I say, we won national contracts. We won contracts with Peel Ports on a national level, Grow How and things like that. So certain pharmaceutical companies and things. So, and then that led me into...
And which sector was this?
This was engineering. So
right, okay.
It was all different types of engineering. So not just the commodity side, such as bearings and belts. This was about, you know, rewinding motors, and pumps, fabrication.
Yeah.
So it was about getting into different businesses, and we opened up industries such as, you know, going into things like rail and other industries that lent itself to our CNC machines and stuff.
Right.
So
it's like CNC cutters and things like that. Okay.
And drillers and things. So so from there, moved into I was again headhunters, and this is where everything changed.
So like that's like precision engineering and things like that, right? Okay.
So, but working with Peel, we took over their stores.
Yeah.
So we'd look after all the stuff in the stores, such as bearings and belts and all this blah blah. But there was a packaging side to the business where we had to look after that. I started dealing with a company for the largest probably packaging company in the world, and they asked me to join them, and that's where it all changed. I worked for one guy, really called, we'll get that name, Barry Henderson. Right. And he's a mentor to this day. He was a proper leader of men, you know. Yeah. All about, and I believed in it, but to actually to dance the dance. You know, everyone knew what their role was within a team. Everyone felt, you know, you'd follow him through brick walls. You can understand why he was former really high up in the army,
Right.
protected the Queen, did all these different things. And you could understand why on a daily basis speaking to him.
Were you aware of his background?
No, but you could, when I met him, no. But you could tell he had
An aura.
Yeah, an aura of you're going to be all right.
So when did you discover? When did you discover his backstory?
After a couple of months, really.
Okay.
Well, not a couple of months, a couple of weeks, because we spent a lot of time together. Because I was brought in as sales director to be to succeed him as MD because he was retiring.
Okay.
So
he was looking for his successor.
Yeah.
And at what point did you know he'd anointed you?
It was during the interview process. So
Really?
It was sales director to be advocate to go into MD.
So I'm really interested in this because I think there's a really palpable relationship, and it does sort of go back to football in one sense. If you think about succession planning, obviously Liverpool's a great example. When Liverpool no club did succession planning better than Liverpool. And it goes back to Shankly through to Paisley to Fagan, and so on and so forth. And even to the point of Kenny Dalglish. And I often think that, in the previous conversation when we were talking about Brian Clough, Kenny Dalglish falls into that category as well, because of course he won a title with two clubs, which is an incredible thing. But if you remember when Kenny Dalglish took over, he had Bob Paisley as his kind of wingman. I'm interested in your sales mentor though. Right, the chap that you mentioned when you were talking about,
in the hire company.
Yeah.
Again,
how often has he come back to you in terms of like the grounding?
Well, I'm still in contact with all these people today.
You are.
Yeah. So he
and do you still reach out for advice?
Oh yeah, for sure. Every week I speak to these people because I spend so much time in the car.
Yeah.
That I always keep in contact with all the people that I've worked with and worked for and stuff like that. And even the young people I've took on in the past and they've moved on to pastures new. I spoke to one on Friday who's doing really well, who's gone on to really bigger and better things, which I made up for him. There's different types of aura and there's different types of mentors in the senses, as you just said. Barry was a leader of people. But Derek was within sales. He could sell ice to an Eskimo.
Really?
Yeah, he made it attractive. He could do things off the cusp. Do you know what I mean? It was so. I'm one of them when I have to plan a sit down, write a letter or write an email, and be very structured.
Fail to plan to fail, right?
But with him, you'd be in the car, and we'd be on the M6. He'd be going 90 odd mile an hour, and he'd verse a really professional letter word for word to the PA who was going out, and it was just like, you would look at him and go, wow, that is something special. We would never. He'd always be able to pivot in a meeting with regards to if you didn't look like you were getting the sale, he'd always think of something and change the commercial aspect or change this or look at this service. And it was something to behold, and hopefully I learned stuff off him because each business had been involved in, including that one. We've always grown, and we've grown really well. And it's down through the people as well, and hopefully I pass stuff on that I've learned from Derek to them people.
So, obviously Derek and Barry come from different worlds, and they serve different responsibilities within their core business delivery. And you've kind of self-selected the best bits.
For sure, yeah.
Right. I wonder if one of your employees was sitting here now, they'd advocate for you paying that forward. Do you think that would be the case?
I'd hope so. It's something, as I say, with our, we've had a brief conversation earlier, but it's one of them whereby our business now is only successful because of the people.
Right.
The people are absolutely fantastic, and what they deliver on a daily basis is, trust. Their behaviours in front of customers and away from customers is fantastic, and we've been able to, quadruple the business in a number of years just because of them and because of the personalities that we have.
You had a decision. You were telling me before we started off camera that you had an opportunity, should we say, that was presented to you as a consequence of success. around the car.
Yeah.
And you chose not to make that.
It was just we've been skint as a business for so long.
Yeah.
And then we actually had a really good year. 2000. We've been working up to this year. We've been paying off a lot of debt when we took the business over.
Yeah.
And when we got to 2000,
the year 2000 or two was this?
2020.
2020. Yeah.
Sorry. So when we got to 2020, we'd made some money, and my accountant was like, "Why don't you treat yourself?" And I was just more or less like,
"You mean as a dividend?"
Yeah. Dividend. I just can't be bothered. I'd rather. We've not had money in the business for so long.
Yeah.
We'd always give great rises and stuff like that because we were growing.
Yeah.
And I went, I'd rather just have money in the bank, be a bit safer. And then COVID hit in the March. This was a January decision. COVID hit in the March, and it was. So,
and you gave up your dream car.
Yeah, no, definitely. But it was and we were able to pay all our staff their full wage for the whole time in COVID and stuff like that. And that was a conversation.
Which you wouldn't have been able to do.
No, we wouldn't
right.
have. And it was one of them whereby when we made the decision, when we come to COVID, and I know they were paying 80%, but that only worked out about 23k or something like that, the government. That was
with furlough and things.
Furlough, the maximum was that. But we've got engineers and stuff, and we had 15 people at the time. And it was a conversation of how long can we last?
Right.
How long have we got funds for? It was like, well, if we close down all the way till November now, we'll be all right. So I never told anyone. I just thought, right, okay, we'll crack on. We supported our people, and you know what? I didn't do it for this reason to get it back, but we've in that time, since then, no one's left the business. Everyone's grown really well. Everyone's become educated again. We've grown. The business has grown again, and it's again a testament of looking after your people, and they'll look after you.
But there's instinct in that, and to make an instinctive choice, not to reward yourself for the success of the business with your dream car, and then to find an unprecedented set of circumstances that follows moments later, and then to be able to, as you say, not do it deliberately as a business decision, doing it almost emotionally.
Yeah.
Does emotion come into it?
Do you know what? There's a saying that I try and live by really, and it's do the right things when no one's watching.
Right, I love that.
At the time, that was it for me. Is no one was watching, no one would have known if you'd have done anything. And everyone, you probably would have deserved it. And people going, "Oh, fair play to you."
Yeah.
You deserve that. But the right thing to do at that time was to and COVID wasn't a thing, so I couldn't say I predicted it.
Yeah.
But it was just one of them whereby it was the right thing by our business and by our people to be secure for that little bit of time.
And do you think that football taught you any of that stuff?
I don't know. I think a lot of playing football, teamwork and stuff like that, that's always been, and camaraderie with your friends and things like that. And I suppose that's one of the reasons, Liverpool's a very, socialist community. We are a socialist nation as part of within the nation. Shankly
describes socialism 100%. in the context of football.
And I think that's why we've been lucky with Shankly and the quieter man with Paisley.
Yeah.
But then that's why I think, we haven't had that really since them sort of guys. And Kenny was loved, but until Klopp. And then Klopp was a real leader of men. He's about the sum of all parts and stuff like that. And I think it really resonated with not just our ideology of football, but our politics and our people and who we are at our core. We could identify with them. So, there's certain things now happen and we lose and no one identifies with the manager because of the way he speaks or whatever it is. But we lose and, no one would call Klopp out or anything like that because, at the end of the day, we believed he was just one of us. Yeah. So, it was easier to stomach, if you like, because he's one of your own.
Yeah, and it's interesting that because you mentioned Kenny Dalglish. I think that his achievement at Blackburn, whilst it was done off the back of great investment from Jack Walker and all of that, you still have to assemble an amazing team, sure. Right? And the team that he assembled was incredible. But he did that after the experience that he had, with Hillsborough.
Yeah.
And I don't think people can fully appreciate the effort that was made to ensure that the club did the right thing, and the toll it took, We all remember his face. When he announced his resignation. You got Noel White standing next to him, and I think one of the things for me, Kenny Dalglish was a pain in my arse when I was growing up, right? Because he always found a goal against my team, but he was just incredible. And my footballing hero is Tony Adams, right? For a bunch of reasons, which I hope I get the chance to talk about on a podcast, but perhaps not in this context, right? And I've met Tony Adams, right? But I've only ever been starstruck once where I couldn't articulate myself, and that was when I met Kenny Dalglish.
The thing is with Dalglish and the Hillsborough disaster is, again, we can say Klopp was one of us, but I'd say Kenny Dalglish is the club, not was or identifies. He is what Liverpool stand for. Yeah. As a club, not just as a region. And he was utterly broken after that, which many people were. But the things that he did in the background that a lot of people maybe aren't even aware of, contacting each family, being there throughout every single press conference, every single tribute, it really broke him. And that's another one of the reasons that we absolutely adore him, is the sense of what he had to give up. And you've seen, as you said, his resignation. You can see his face now. The resignation on screen, and he was absolutely devastated. But I'd have feared the worst if he wouldn't have done that, because he needed to get out of it. But again, he's a custodian of our club now. And we wouldn't want anyone else speaking for us, to be honest.
So, before you came in, we asked you to bring something with you, an object, which I can see just there, and it's something that connects you to a football memory. Tell me what it is.
Well, I went to the Champions League final in 2005, where we beat AC Milan. Yeah. I think everyone's
in extraordinary circumstances.
I think everyone's aware of it and how we
Can I have a look?
Yeah, for sure, go for it. But when we come back from Istanbul, a couple of days later, we had a charity do booked in the Grafton.
The Grafton rooms.
Yeah. And it was a Kenny Dalglish charity event, actually. It was, Ian Rush was speaking, Jan Mulvey was hilarious, I think Kennedy was there.
Right.
And he had that big banner behind, you think this is hell, go to Grafton on a Saturday night. So when I was there, and I was meant to go with the guys that went to Istanbul, and because we were all still so rough a couple of days later, most of them pulled out, apart from myself and a couple of others.
Right.
And it went round, there was a big bin bag, and you had to write your name on a fiver. Yeah. And I did 3 or 4 of them, put them in the bag, and it was a signed ball by the whole Champions League squad, obviously done before we got the Champions League final.
Wow.
And they pulled my name out, so it's something that I got home, gave it to my dad straight away, and then he's passed it to my son. Yeah. And it's just something that we still speak about today, so we even went out bringing it out today. Even my son was going, you better put that back when you get back. So it's something that is treasured within our household.
I'm not surprised, and what we're actually looking at, as well as the signatures, we're looking at a size 5 total 90 Nike Premier League ball from the 2004-2005 season. One would assume. Yeah. So that is really, really something. Okay. We're now into the penalty shootout. Right. This is the quickfire round.
Okay.
It's the first thing that comes into your head, right? And I get to decide whether the ball goes in or not. Okay. And we've had, so far so good. We've had some very good penalty takers. You all get the same questions. Okay. So home or away?
Home.
Okay. Watching or playing?
Watching.
Okay. Best captain?
Gerrard.
VAR or nah?
Nah.
International friendlies or pre-season friendlies?
Pre-season friendlies.
Okay, the final one. Doesn't have to be football. One result you will never get over.
If it's going to be football, it's going to be Istanbul. No, because we've spoken about that. Do you know what? I'll go for something a bit different. Is on the way to Istanbul, we played Chelsea.
Yeah.
And at home, I would genuinely say it's the only time at a match I've been scared. I was scared of the atmosphere. It was the vitriol because of how Mourinho had wound us up.
Yeah. Champions League is this?
Yeah. Champions League semi-final.
Yeah.
Mourinho had wound us up. He was shushing the crowd.
Yeah.
And the actual place vibrated. So when you play Barcelona, you beat them 4-0. It was a great game, and but it was more it wasn't aggressive, it was more joyful and it was supporting the team.
Mentality giants.
Yeah, that the Chelsea one where we won 1-0, the ghost goal. If
Yeah.
It was terrifying. So I'd probably go for that result because of that game and how that played out.
Brilliant. Right, now, no one leaves this place empty-handed, and I'm just going off camera, and that's because I left it on my sideboard. So thanks to the magic of podcasting and technology, it has arrived and it is there. So I would like to hand it to you, and if you could read it out for me, it says there.
It's football for breakfast, good companion, 25-26.
Graeme Kelly, thank you so much for being on Football for Breakfast and becoming a good companion.
Thank you.
Graeme Kelly is a man who knows that whether it's a football team or a business team, that the magic happens when people feel that they belong. Football for Breakfast is a production by the Good Companions, brought to you by OSS Security. They've got you covered at osssecurity.com.